2. Hi there. Welcome to another edition of Cambridge Inside Out. My name's Robert Winters.
And I'm Susana Segat. And today we welcome a special guest.
Patty Nolan, I am on school committee.
That's right.
And a resident and parent and many other things, just like the two of you.
And we're glad you are.
Right, and it's often the case where we're hastily scrambling to put things together here.
Actually, today's an important show because just like the city council had their mid-year meeting, the school committee had their mid-year meeting. So we're really happy that school committee woman Nolan is here to tell us about this meeting because there were a lot of important votes and a lot of interesting discussions. So we're really happy you're here for this.
Thank you.
Right.
Glad to be here.
Right. I thought it might be appropriate to sort of, before we get underway with other things, just to mention a couple of rather major events of yesterday, actually. We had two major figures of former elected officials of Cambridge passed away in the same day, August 4th, 2014. Earlier in the day, it was actually the death of Peter Vellucci, who served as a state representative from, I believe, 1982 to 1992, covering Cambridge and Somerville. Peter is also the son of former longtime city councilor and former mayor Al Vellucci. So that was a bit of a shock, but even as if that wasn't enough, last night it was Walter Sullivan, former mayor and longtime city councilor Walter Sullivan, passed away. As I've heard it said, surrounded by family, and at the age of 91. Peter Vellucci was 72. Walter Sullivan was 91. And I thought maybe we could. Oh, and I'll say a few things about some of the arrangements that are coming up for now. But I don't know if we can kind of cue up a picture or something. I don't know. We've got to sort of. How do you forget which thing?
We'll go to the picture.
There we go.
And then we'll just put it on right here.
There we go. All right. So what we have here, this is just some photos. Again, just. I mean, I'm not going to assume everybody remembers Walter Sullivan. Many people who are watching this may very well, I imagine. But we have here just some photos. It just happened to be ones that I had available of Walter. Walter is actually seated in the chair in that one, while his son Michael Sullivan, who's currently Middlesex County Clerk of Courts, was being sworn as mayor in 2002. He's being sworn in this photo, and we'll show you a few others in a moment here, by his uncle Edward Sullivan. And seated in the sort of central mayor's chair is Michael's father, Walter Sullivan. You may notice on the back wall there are the portraits of Walter Sullivan, Michael's grandfather, Mickey the Dude Sullivan, and Edward Sullivan over on the right. This all taking place in the Sullivan Chamber. And I think it's sort of just to remember Walter. This is a photo taken after the inauguration with Walter Sullivan seated in the background and Michael taking over the helm as the new mayor of Cambridge in 2002. Again, I won't dwell on this a whole lot here, but there's a nice family of Michael's. Michael is actually a twin with his brother Walter Jr. So on the left there, and his wife, and Michael. And this is Michael's mother, Marion Sullivan, and his father, Walter Sullivan, in a nice photo taken there. Michael and his wife, and his child, perhaps the next Mayor Sullivan someday, I always like to say.
Very cute and photogenic.
And I have to say, this is actually the one photo that I really, really wanted that day. This was the mayor's Sullivan. Edward Sullivan, who served as mayor one term, Michael Sullivan, who was just inaugurated for the first of 2 terms, and Walter Sullivan on the right, who just passed away, who served as mayor for 3 separate terms in 3 different decades, actually.
Wow.
He served as a city councilor from 1960 to 1993. So anyway, again, we won't dwell on this so much here. You can kind of see the twins there and Michael. All right, so anyway, so that's a little bit on Walter. As I say, Peter Vellucci also passed away yesterday, so it was sort of a tough day. There are, for those who are interested, there are some arrangements, and I hope I get these right here. But Peter Vellucci, there will be a visiting hours on Wednesday, this Wednesday, August 6th. I believe that's the 6th, right? Yes.
Yes.
At the, for Peter, at the Donovan Fierro Funeral Home at 140 Otis Street in East Cambridge. The funeral will be on Thursday at 10 a.m., followed by interment at the Sacred Heart Church on 6th Street. I just learned some of the partial arrangements for Walter Sullivan. You know, when Walter's brother, Edward Sullivan, passed away some number of years ago, they actually did something rather unprecedented and brought his casket into the Sullivan Chamber at City Hall. And a long parade of people who've known him over many decades passed through City Hall. So the Sullivan Chamber is right now undergoing major restoration work, so that wasn't an option. But interestingly, this Friday, there will be visitors for Walter Sullivan this Friday from 3 to 8 at the Walter J. Sullivan water treatment plant at Fresh Pond. It's named after Walter, so it's got some open space. So they'll actually have Walter there. And the arrangements have not yet been made for the funeral. Some details, but it'll be a funeral on Saturday, which I guess is August 9th, I believe. Right. So anyway,
Yes, Saturday's the 9th.
yeah. So for those who are interested, who knew Walter and who knew Peter, you know, you may want to just sort of check out some of those details.
So these were really important people in Cambridge history, and we're sorry for their loss in the big picture and in terms of what we've lost historically. But I know that they're also really important to their families and their friends, and our thoughts and prayers go out to all of you. We're sorry for this loss.
Right. So, well, anyway, on to other things. I think maybe we should sort of spend a little time with Patty. Yeah. Right. So.
Yeah, I did serve, or I was certainly aware of Michael's tenure as a mayor, but not his father, so I.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting for many of us who sort of been around the block a few times. You know, we sort of wrongly assume, well, everybody knows Walter or everybody knew Al Vellucci, whatever. But you know, as the city changes over the years, you know, there are a lot of people who move away or pass away, and you know, there are actually fewer and fewer people. So, but these are pretty important
Yes.
people in the history of the city. So, and of course, we have other elected officials who are becoming more. Well, one day we will look back upon and celebrate their tenure as elected representatives, including Patty here to my left. So Patty,
Yes.
so tell me, so that now you've just done the mid-year or the midsummer, just like the city council, you have like one major meeting this summer.
meeting, yes.
And then school committee is then, I mean, you're never really off because there's
Right.
always things happening, but in terms of formal meetings, when do you return for formal meetings?
We have some subcommittee meetings this month for August, but we really don't have our next formal one until September 2nd, which is the first Tuesday of September. It is the day after Labor Day this year. School starts on that day for everybody except for kindergartners, and that'll be the first full official business meeting for us.
I think the city council, they wait at least one more week, I'm not even sure. But
Well, with the Monday being Labor Day, that would make
they're-
sense.
they're
You know
not
what
open
I
on Labor Day.
really like about Cambridge is a lot of cities and towns, you don't really know when school starts. Does it start this day or that day? And for Cambridge, the policy is the day after Labor Day,
Right.
school starts. So no matter when it is, parents can plan. It's a really good policy. So, and Labor Day's early this year, so
Right,
you're
I
all
know.
stuck
For
coming
those
back
school
early.
districts that start in August, it's always surprised me. I'm glad that
Oh,
we
yeah.
are.
Well, and those of us who work in the universities, let me tell you, it may be August 4th, but I'm already feeling like this fall semester breathing down my neck. Going,
Well, you know, it's
"Oh,
not
I gotta
related to
get ready."
school committee, but my son, our oldest, is starting college in 2 weeks.
What college?
Congratulations.
What college?
So I'm very aware that some colleges start before we do. His first day of classes is August 25th, and in
Okay.
fact, they made it clear to students that that Labor Day is a classroom day.
Yeah.
He will be heading off to Lafayette College, which is about an hour north of Philadelphia in Pennsylvania,
Oh. okay.
Congratulations.
because they have a strong engineering and math program, Robert, so.
See, I would have
That's
expected
what
this much.
appealed to him, and that it's a small liberal arts college that he liked when he was there.
Well, the
So-
freshman class always goes early to settle in.
Right, and he signed up for a 4-day community service option. So he'll be on campus even 4 days before the rest of the freshman class.
Oh,
So-
congratulations.
so
And your
very-
daughter's in high school.
Daughter's in high school, she is entering 11th grade. So,
Congratulations.
And why isn't she in my math class yet?
you know, she might be.
She might be.
She actually, if she doesn't get another option, she will be in your math class in the fall, actually.
I was with on one of these a community walks thing that was put together for from somebody in mid-Cambridge, and it was one of the people we were on there. We were chatting very nicely, and as we passed through the Harvard campus, he happened to mention that. I said, "Oh yeah, that's where I teach my mathematics class in the extension school." He says, "Well, my son, he took some class with the Harvard Extension." Oh, really? What's this? And it turns out it was a student of mine.
Yeah, of course. No,
Very
she
small
is.
world.
She is one of those students, and in fact, it's relevant to one of the things we talked about at our summer meeting. She, like our son, is one of the students who is quite advanced in math.
Right.
And a combination of her being advanced and the district helping her by allowing her to take a couple math classes. She finished calculus this year. We're very proud of her as a sophomore. So next year she will
Wow.
be doing either multivariable calculus, we hope. And the high school, which is also very nice, used to have, if you did calculus, you were done, and there was no option for any further math. Now, while they don't teach multivariable at the school, they have arrangements with Harvard Extension, so you have many of our
Right.
students. They do teach an AP statistics class as well as computer science. So there's options for
Fantastic.
students who are strong in math and interested in math to keep moving in math even beyond calculus.
Yeah.
Or it's not that calculus is something every single student, in my view, necessarily needs. In fact, I'm not sure I should say this, but of course, I will.
What?
What?
No.
That
No, don't worry. I'm
if you had to pick between two high-level math classes that are going to be useful for everybody in life, I think statistics is likely to be more useful for more students than calculus. That they're actually good, they should know it, and they should
Yeah.
use it later on in life.
Actually, having
I
taught
agree
a
with that.
statistics class, I actually endorse the idea that everybody should at least learn a little bit of statistics because it actually helps you read. What I mean by that is that if you read news stories or watch television stories and people start quoting things, if you've got a little knowledge of statistics, you can kind of recognize the BS a little better.
Exactly.
So just for discerning truth and fallacy, it's not a bad idea. So I strongly endorse that.
Yes.
Yes.
Before we talk about the summer meeting, the last time we had you on the show, it was the beginning of the term. You were excited, and the year was about to take effect. So can we just wrap up the year?
Sure.
You tell us, how did the schools do?
Okay, school committee year in 5, 4, go.
Let's see. Well, from the school committee's perspective, there's a few things, because remember, we started this term with 3 new members.
Right.
Yeah,
Even though the mayor had been mayor before, he was new, certainly this term, it had been a couple terms. And then 2 very new members, both Fran Cronin and Kathleen Kelly.
Who'd never been in office before.
Who'd never
at
been in
all.
office before, so hadn't served with any of us. And then 4 of us returned, Mervyn Osborne, Richard Harding, Fred Fantini, and myself. So on the school committee side, just having that new team in place meant that there's always a period in which you're getting to know each other. So I'm
Learning
excited
curve.
about working with both the colleagues I had before, and also excited about working with the new colleagues. And on the school district side, we have several new high-level staff that I think has been changing the district approach.
Can you tell us a little bit about
Yes, and that is they've been there now a full year, so they have had time to really start to sort out what it is that they are going to bring to our district, and that is our Director of Special Education. It's Assistant Superintendent for Student Services, which includes special education, also includes students who aren't necessarily special education but have accommodations called a 504. So we have restructured that department some. Dr. Victoria Greer, who came here from outside the state, has had rave reviews from parents across the district, from many teachers, and particularly she is focused on how is it that we can do things better. One reason I was happy to support her, I'll remember this forever, that sometimes there's a phrase you remember. In her interview with us, because school committee has to vote on the directors of whoever will be the director of special education.
Is that true?
Yes.
So
There's about 4 positions we have to
Okay.
vote for. Now, the superintendent provides candidates, and we are not supposed to unreasonably withhold consent, but it is, that a superintendent
It's your
cannot go
hire.
forward with
It's your
the
hire.
special education without
Right.
our.
Yeah.
Now, what's interesting is we're not involved in the rehire or but,
Right.
so she at some point was talking about what she wanted to do with us. She said, you know, even if you don't hire me, I'm going to tell you about this program and I'm going to give you all the materials because you really need it. And that made me feel, I had already felt good about her, but I felt like that's the kind of honesty we need, because the reality is our special education department was one that had been under state receivership, I think, for 20 years. When you were on, I believe it had been in serious, there had been some serious issues around special education. They were getting sorted out, but we had not, frankly, had a leader that was.
Well, a lot of unhappiness from families too, but that's the
Yeah.
most important thing.
And we and yet we were spending and are still spending an inordinate amount of money.
Fighting it.
And yet it didn't seem like
Yeah.
our special education students were getting the education they deserve. So it's one thing if
Yeah.
you spend the money and you see, well, they're getting results. So she has had a big impact. She has restructured the department. That was something during the school year that was caused some concern, because there are many people who had positions that disappeared and they had to reapply for new positions, and they weren't. If I was in a position and it disappeared, I had to apply for a new position. That definitely caused some concern among many of the staff whose positions lost. However, the way she restructured the department is viewed as something that is going to help move us forward. So she's structured in such a way that it's much clearer now lines of responsibility for the kinds of services that are being provided. And she also aligned all the middle schools are now reporting to one person going up, so that they're all coordinating with each other, the elementary school, the high school. We don't have to go into details about the restructuring, but that was really good, and that was something that happened in the second half of the year after.
To do it in that short of timeline is really impressive.
Right.
Well,
So
now how will you know whether this has been an improvement and a success?
That is a great question, and I will say that even though we're moving towards it, and I think we have some good people on staff, I still think we fall very far behind in having measurable goals anytime we do a restructuring, anytime we install a new program, to really ensure that we have very specific measurable goals that we expect to see, partly so that we know if we've achieved it, we can celebrate it, and if we haven't achieved it, it might not be, well, let's
Right.
throw it out, but more like, gee, why haven't we achieved it? Just like when you build a building, if you expect to see 20% energy efficiency and you're only seeing 10%, you don't say, well, it was wrong. You say, gee, we were supposed to see this. Why aren't we?
So is she taking that into account?
So she is taking that into account, and she has, one of the things she's done, and I'm not sure if it's on our website, I should check, she's created something called a dashboard, which is, all right, here's our goals for the special education department, and it includes some measurables like the number of students who are referred and how quickly they get their plans in place. Also, the number of students in special education based on some standardized tests, what percentage of those have a student growth that is higher than it had been in the past. There's specific measurable goals. It's called a dashboard. I also like it because it does things like, well, if you're meeting it, it's green. If you're kind of, it's yellow. And if you're not meeting it, it's red.
You mean even I could understand it?
Even you could understand it, Richard. So,
Richard.
I mean, Robert, she's brought that to us as well.
Right.
And then, let's see, quickly, I'm going
No,
into too
take
much
your time.
detail. The other,
Because when we're going to break soon, you can
Okay.
just talk about
Okay.
the other meeting, the other half hour.
of course, the other ongoing question, because we just finished the second full year of the restructuring of the district into middle schools, called the Innovation
It's been 2
Agenda.
years.
It was voted about 3.5 years ago, and then
They planned it in.
yes, it actually is two full years of operation. And there's a few changes that are happening with that. Several of the schools are considering changing their schedule right now they're on 6-day schedules instead of 5-day schedules, which makes it a lot easier to schedule things, because
What
if
does
you
that
have
mean, a
6 days.
6-day schedule?
That means that instead
Monday's
of,
not
you have a
always
schedule
Monday.
Monday through Friday, you have a schedule A, B, C, D, E, F, and that a given Wednesday might be A schedule or B schedule or C schedule. What that allows you to do is, if you have, for instance, music 2 times a week, it's kind of hard, because
Well,
if
it's
you
2
want a
times every
class 2
6
times a
days.
week, right, or 3 times a week, if you have a 6-day schedule, it makes it easier to schedule things
Makes it easy to forget, too.
throughout the year. It also, it
How do
definitely
you
does.
pack that day?
I'll tell you though, that middle schoolers end up, it's just like a lot of high schools operate on
Right.
those kinds of schedules.
Okay.
However, the reason it causes real problems in Cambridge is that every single one of our middle schools, it's a separate middle school other than Amigos, which is still a K-8 school due to their bilingual immersion program, shares a building and often some staff with a K-5 school that's a 5-day schedule. So a nightmare of scheduling means that it's extremely challenging to figure out a way, not to have people spend half their time just figuring out how to fit people in. I think that will affect students' experience if it turns out that the school day just flows better. The big thing in the school, which I think happened this school year, it was just about a year ago, I can't believe that either, was a question about whether we were going to extend the school day by an hour.
Oh, yeah, what happened to that?
Well, the teachers voted down the contract. The contract was proposed. It was going to be an across-the-board K through 12 extended hour, 1 hour. And I believe why it was voted down, frankly, made sense. And it made sense because we weren't telling people how we were going to use that hour.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't saying, I couldn't say to you,
Right.
we're going to use it for music, art,
Right.
world
You're
language.
just extending
We said,
it.
well, we think we can do all these things.
Yeah.
And honestly, I felt very uncomfortable as a school committee member being asked to vote on something if I didn't know for sure how it was going to be. That's not a responsible way of going about changing, especially that major structure. We
Well,
hadn't
why
worked
would
with-
you need to change if you don't know why you're changing?
Right, and everybody keeps saying we need more time, and that I agree with. I just want to make sure that we know how we're going to use
Right.
that time. The other reason I believe it got voted down, which makes, again, sense, is the high school was included in it. And for a lot of people that felt like, wait a second, it's one thing to say that our K-5s or our middle schools could use an extra hour, but if you're talking about extending the high school by an hour, there were just a lot of people who felt that, again, we don't know how it's going to be used and we're not sure how it's going to work. So the teachers voted it down, which meant that we didn't have to vote on it. We went back to the bargaining table. And actually, that contract just passed in March. So they ended up working without a contract for about 6 months. And then the new contract that came forward was very similar to contracts in the past. There was what I would consider a pretty generous raise in these times, which is a couple percent. It's a 3-year contract. It doesn't include any extra time, and the big change there is it includes a review of our teacher evaluation system,
Good.
which the state mandated to make sure that we are moving towards a system that is more conducive to helping teachers get the professional development they need. And I think you know when you were on it, it was either you were great or not.
Right.
Well, that's how many principals are going to say you're not great.
Right.
And now
So
it's
they-
a graded system.
So the state mandates an evaluation system, but you get to design it, or are there some standards that you
Yes, so the
must meet?
state mandates some of the components of it, like it has to have a few different categories. It can't just be
I like
exemplary
her.
or not.
She's okay.
Right. But
Right.
Well,
and
then
they
you-
provide you a template, but you can change
Right.
it as long as you follow their guidelines.
Yes,
Okay.
that you can have resources flow into an evaluation and help people improve in certain
Right.
cases. That's wonderful.
Right.
That's good.
That was a big issue, I think, this term. And let's see, what were the other? It's hard to say now that the school's over.
Well, actually, the one that I was sort of following was there was a change in the, or a modification in a policy regarding middle school math.
Yes, there
Right.
was. You had
So
you
that
had
was
come
good.
to us even, I think, and said you should do this, and we didn't listen to you.
Yeah, what can I say?
Well, like some other things in life, sometimes after a bit of time, the change that you wanted to have happen does come forward, and it did
Right.
happen this time,
So
Robert.
tell us what happened.
So we had decided, and we had decided when we did the restructure in the middle schools, we set a policy initially that was going to say, we're going to have all heterogeneous classes, we're not going to separate kids out except in math.
Right.
And then at the last minute, all of a sudden it was, well, we're not going to separate kids out,
Period.
including in math.
Right.
It was specific that wasn't going to happen. That was a last minute change that floored many people, including myself on school committee, that it was changed. But that passed. I didn't vote for it at the time because of that concern, that I felt there were too many kids who would be not able to get their needs met, both kids who were advanced but also kids who were struggling.
That's right.
And basically we tried it, and it was not something that many parents and many students, and frankly many teachers, thought was working very well. So our current policy is, we went back and said, we will now allow only in math an accelerated math pathway, which again, interestingly enough, is anticipated by the Common Core, which is the curriculum standards that we're using, they talk about a high school path that includes what we're calling our accelerated path. It's in the standards. It's saying this is how you do it. You start in 6th grade identifying some kids, and then in 7th grade in 8th grade you basically go through this much material so that by 9th grade they have finished Algebra 1 and they can start with geometry in 9th grade.
Mm-hmm.
It was still somewhat controversial. There are a couple of things that made it a policy that ended up passing, which I think are exactly right things to do, which is to say we want everybody to do this. You know what?
Right.
Middle class kids don't have a lock on being able to do Algebra 1.
Right.
Again, Cambridge, the birthplace of the Algebra Project, 30 years ago was saying that algebra is something every 8th grader should have, particularly kids of color and low-income kids, and they can do it as long as you present it right. And 30 years later, we are not doing it. An astonishing low percentage of our kids finished Algebra 1 in 8th grade, and it had been going down. It had been 15%, and then it went down to 10. Under the first year of the innovation agenda, there was one school that had, I think, 20 kids pass the Algebra 1 test. There were a couple schools that only had 2,
Right.
which
Why
was
is
a
that?
few percent. Susana, I would say it's a combination of you have a range of students, and teachers can't teach across that. It's just, you're asking too much of
Right.
teachers.
That's exactly what my biggest concern was. It wasn't that they were, I assume there would be a teacher or two who certainly could perform magic, but you know, it was a little too much to ask.
But also, we're not preparing the kids enough younger on. I would say, frankly, if we look at it, the kids on this accelerated path, if they end up being, which they probably will be, disproportionately middle class, disproportionately white and Asian, shame on us, because that means that our teachers in the early grades are not truly giving the message to students, you can do it, you should do it, we want you to do it, and we believe you can do it.
Right. Now, we're going to actually have to take a little 3-minute break in a few seconds here.
And then we'll
So-
come back and hear about the special summer school committee meeting.
Okay.
That's right, and all the exciting things to come. So until then, this is Cambridge Inside.
And we're out. See ya.